Okay, so now we've got a functional drop zone, but it could do with a bit of styling, and we also need to be able to display a preview of what we're dropping into our drop zone as well. So let's take a look at how we can do this next. And we'll head back to VS Code, and what we want to do is we'll start in our photo upload widget because we want to know what file has been dropped into our drop zone so that we can then display it in the second part here. So what we'll do is we'll add a piece of local state inside our photo upload widget, and for that we'll use our use state hook we get from React. So we'll say const files in square brackets and a function to set the files, and we'll set this equal to use state. And what we'll do is we'll pass this function down, the set files function, down to the photo widget drop zone. So we'll say set files equals set files. And we'll head back to our photo widget drop zone and we'll add an interface. So we'll say interface and props, and we'll say set files, and we'll add the signature for this function, and it's going to return void, but what we're going to pass into this is the files array. Now there is a file object we could use for this, but what we also want to do is add an additional property so that we can add a preview to the file itself. And then we'll be able to display that in our second part of our component. So rather than extending the file interface and adding that property, what we'll do is just cheat and we'll use any. But you could do it that way if you wanted to, but for brevity, we're just going to use the any property here. So what we'll do is we'll pass in the set files, the structured function, and pass in the props as the type. And what we're going to do here is create two styles. We're going to create a style for when the drop zone is inactive, and we'll create an additional style for when it's active. So what we'll do is we'll say const and dz styles equals, and then we'll just add some properties inside here. So we'll give it a border, and we'll make it dashed, and 3 pixels, and give it a color of EEE, which is just a dark gray. And then we'll add a border color as well, even though we've kind of added it in our border, but we want to be able to overwrite this in the second style we're going to add. So we'll again make this EEE. And what we'll do is say border radius is 5 pixels, and we'll give it padding top, and make this 30 pixels, and we'll say text align, and we'll make it centered, or say center, and then we'll give it a height property of 200. And then we'll add a style below this and say const dz active equals, and all we're going to do is just change the border color, and we're going to set this to green. And then what we'll do, we'll just go down and work our way through this component. So we've got our onDrop function, which is stored inside this use callback. And what we're going to do is set our files, but at the same time, we're going to add a preview property so that we can display it inside our photo upload widget as well. So what we're going to do to achieve that is we're going to use the set files function, and we're going to pass in the accepted files. Now this is an array, so we need to map over this, and we're going to get our file, and we're going to say it's a type of any. And then inside here, what we're going to use is object.assign, and we're going to specify the file as the target, and then open curly brackets. And in order to add an additional property to the file, we're going to specify the name of the property, which is preview, and then we're going to say URL, and then we can use the create object URL function and pass in the file. And this is going to give us a preview of the image that we drop into our drop zone. And because this is using use callback, the use callback function takes a dependency array. So we'll say set files. And we've not been using use callback in our own code, but what this one does, it returns a memoized version of a callback that only changes if one of the dependencies has changed. So it's really just an optimization feature. And it's only if this function changes that it would then recreate this function in order to use a new one. So it's just going to reuse the set files function by using the memoized version of whatever's inside the used callback. And then we're going to keep this the same. We don't need to change any of that. And then we're going to style what we're returning here for our component. So what we're going to do inside this div, we're going to keep the properties that are being spread over this. And the get root props doesn't really give us much. And if you ever want to see what's going on inside our hook, you can of course see the documentation simply by using the F12 and being taken to the type definition file. And we can see that our get root props is a function that effectively returns Dropzone root props. And if you want to see what these are, then you can just scroll down and this is what's inside our root props. And all this has got is a string for a ref key and then a key of type any. Nothing that we're really using inside this, but we'll keep it inside our div just in case we do need it. And what we'll do is we'll give this some style and we'll say is drag active and we'll give it a ternary operator. And if the drag is active, then we're going to want to apply both the DZ styles and the DZ active styles. And the way that we can do that is by using the spread operator. So if the drag is active, then we're going to want to spread across all of our DZ styles. And then we'll use a spread operator for the DZ active. So we get all of the styles from the first style here, including our border color. But then the second spread operator is going to overwrite the border color inside DZ styles. And then we can use the colon, and if we're not active, then we're just going to apply the DZ styles alone. Now we're getting an error here on our style property, and it's got a complaint about the text align. And it's telling us that type string is not assignable to type center, inherit, blah, blah, blah. And this is a bit weird, but what we need to do to get around this for our text align property, center is just a string. So what we need to specify is as center. And then this gets around the warning we're getting from TypeScript inside here, and the warning's gone away. And then we'll keep our inputs with the get input props, but then we don't need this code here, so we can remove this. And we'll give it an icon. And we'll give it a name equal to upload. And we'll give it a size equal to huge. And then below this, we'll give it a header. And we'll say the content equals drop image here. And what we also want to do is see a preview of this image. So let's go back to our photo upload widget. And we'll have something in our files once something has been dropped in there. And inside step 2, what we'll do is we'll add an expression and we'll say files. And we'll make sure that we have them or something in there. So we'll use the double ampersand. And then we'll say files.length greater than 0 and double ampersand. And then open some parentheses. And we've got a complaint about our files saying it's possibly undefined. So what we want to do is create an empty array inside our use state so that warning goes away. And then we can add an image that we get from Semantic UI React. And what we'll do is give it a source equal to, and we'll say files. And we're only going to allow one file to be dropped at any one time. So we're going to get the first element of the array and then specify .preview for the preview objects that we're going to be using here. Now, once again, we've got a warning here about the preview not being available on type never. So what we'll do is we'll give our use state the any type so that that warning also goes away. So we're cheating a little bit to save a bit of time just so that we can see this functionality. And what we'll do is we'll just go back to our browser now and let's refresh this page. And we'll click on photos, we'll click on add photo, and we can see our drop zone has now got a bit of style. And if I drop an image in, let's go for BAT4 this time, then we can see the image being populated in the resize image step. Excellent. But what we want to do is go a step further, and we want the user in step 2 to be able to resize the image. So what we'll take a look at next is adding a cropper so that the user can do just that.